Right. So last month I was asked to give a seminar on how to start a business, which I did up in Newcastle. And the deal was that I would try to teach people how to start a business in a day. So I stood up and for 9 hours in a room full of people, about this many people, I said, fine, I'm going to teach you how to start a business. We started at 8 in the morning and we ended at 7 at night. I'm now going to give you the 6-minute version. I won't cover it all. If we're going to only focus on raising money, and most of you are aspire to start a business, or have started what is ultimately, at this moment in time, a very small business, then we are talking about small amounts of money, objectively speaking. There are only two things you need to understand about investors. One, first, you have to get their interest. Second, you have to get their money. And that is the order of events. People forget the basics. I only have 7 minutes. I can only cover very few things. And I tend not to talk too fast. To get their interest, you have to remember one thing. You gotta tell a story. You are telling a story. People live and understand the world by the stories we tell. I'm a storyteller. I tell stories all the time. Every time I start a business, I have a story. I have a good guy, I have a bad guy, I have hills, I have lovers, I have people falling out. Good things happen, disasters happen, but at the end, there's a denouement, there's a success. There's a business, there's a hero, there's a heroine, they go off into the sunset, and everybody makes money, everyone's successful, there's an outcome. So I started a business 3 years ago, which is a mobile software company, and I told my investors a story. I stood up in front of them and I said, let me tell you about kids in Japan today. And I talked about teenage girls and teenage boys and how they wanted to meet each other and how they would wander through the streets with their mobile phones, and their mobile phones would introduce them to each other, and they'd have a lover before the day was out, or at least a date. It might sound like a peculiar story, but it was an engaging story. Didn't happen to be true, but I really liked the story. I wanted it to be true. I still want it to be true. In fact, I'm writing the software, hopefully, that will make it come true. Someday. The point was, they got it. Because I had real people in real situations with real issues that were really being solved, and I painted a picture. I created an engaging moment for all of us. I caught the investors' interest. Because what you're doing at that point, when you tell a very good story, is you're moving them from reasons to say no to looking for reasons to say yes. Every investor is an emotional investor. There is no difference between a large investor and a small investor, and large amounts of money and small amounts of money. When you are talking to an investor, you're talking to somebody who starts out disbelieving, and you need to get them to suspend their disbelief and go on a fictional journey with you. It is fiction. You've not started the business. Everything you're telling is in the future. It hasn't happened yet. That's fiction. It's a forecast of a world that doesn't exist. So you've got to bring them along on your fantasy and make them feel that it could come true. That is what you're doing when you capture their interest. And once you've got desire, now you've got a group of people who are sitting there going, I want to make an investment. Help me find ways to avoid saying no. So we move to part 2. How do you help investors avoid saying no? So, same company. The company is called TrueTap. When I did my angel round, so I started the company, put some money in myself, got it going, and then very soon thereafter, we needed real money. And so I went to a group of angels who happens to be my own angel group, so they weren't alien and they weren't foreigners, but they still like a good story, and they still need to be persuaded. And instead of writing them a business plan, I wrote them a letter. And it said, Dear investors, let me tell you about all the risks that we face if you join me in this investment. And I then listed all the risks, starting from the largest and most severe, the largest and most likely, to the smallest and least likely. It took 19 pages. It's a risky investment. And I started with the risks. The biggest risks were ones I couldn't deal with. That if, in fact, those risks came true, we would all lose all our money and we would all fail. So I started off with, this is a risky investment. Here is why. The biggest risk is, and then I listed it. And then I, in the second paragraph, said, and there is nothing we can do about it. And then I went to the next risk. And I worked my way through every risk. At the end of 19 pages, I had a lot of risks I could talk about. I wrote, if you're still reading this, You're nuts. If you're still reading this, turn to the spreadsheet which is attached, and that will show you what looks like if it works. And the spreadsheet's great at all the kind of graphs you like, up and to the right, you know. Or as they say in the United States, high and to the right, just like George Bush. That was a joke, guys. Suffice to say, that paper worked very well. The reason it worked well, you have to understand how investment works. The reason it works well is because if there is no risk, there cannot be commensurate reward. I'll repeat it. If there is no risk, there can't be reward. If it's not a risky opportunity, then there's no reward of equal dimension. If you come to me and say, I've got a risk-free investment, the first thing I know is there's not much money to be made. There's no free lunch in this world. As an investor, unless it's risky, I don't get big returns. So if you come to me and say there are no risks, I say there are no rewards. If I put 19 pages of risks in front of people, you know what they end up knowing? They know that if it works, the rewards are immense. So I talk about the risks. And I talk about the degree to which I can defray those risks. And if I can't, I simply acknowledge them and move on. That was very persuasive. I raised the money in 24 hours. It worked very well. I encourage you to do the same. Tell a story. Make the story compelling. They deserve a good story. They deserve heroes and heroines. Deliver those heroes and heroines to them. And then tell them about all the possible risks you're going to encounter, and you are more likely to get the money than a traditional business plan, which none of us ever read, which some of us don't even write, and which we all turn to the end and just look at the number at the end anyway. Thank you very much.